This is the Policy Council. My name is Okwemi Agbaje. Today I look at the issue of security, not operations of it, but the funding of security in Lagos State in particular, and in Nigeria in general. How has Lagos State done it? How has it worked? What are the mechanisms? And what lessons have we learned? I do this week and the next week with the Executive Secretary of a funding agency for security in Lagos State. Enjoy the program. You're welcome back to the Policy Council. My guest today is the Executive Secretary and the CEO of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. He was a Commissioner for Lands in Lagos State. He was also previously the Permanent Secretary and Solicitor General in the State's Ministry of Justice. He was a Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. He worked for a long time in the State's Ministry of Justice as a career State Counsel. And today he presides over a unique institution that attempts to obviate the gap in funding the security apparatus in Lagos State. Mr. Fola Athawale, you're welcome to the Policy Council. Again, this is your second time.
Indeed it is.
And this time I want us to spend a lot of time. I want my viewers to fully understand what your trust fund does, how it operates, what its mechanisms are, and all of that. So let's start. Why was there a need to form a trust fund for security in Lagos State?
Well, basically, the need to create trust funds, which are essentially institutions that attract funding and support both from government and the private sector. The need to establish such funds, and it's a growing phenomenon across the country, is simply an indication of a funding system failure at the center. Because a trust fund indicates that you are operating X budget. You're going outside the traditional and constitutional forms of funding. And 3 decades of underfunding by the federal government of its agencies, and then its replication of multiple agencies to further stretch the financial burden has necessitated local solutions to what should essentially be national problems. So that's basically, and the fact that security is a very expensive business. And not only is it expensive, it requires a lot of attention, you know, to some of the component parts. And I don't think that the federal government has fully confronted this problem, or is probably in denial about the gravity and the extent of the as an example, for instance, the 2013 budget for the police is 311 billion naira. Now, it sounds a lot until you start to break it down into its component parts. 293 billion of that is for salaries and personnel costs. So already over 80% is gone, leaving less than 20 billion to run and kit. 8 billion of that is for overheads, which is a scandalously small amount of money to run
national police,
36 commands, states. FCT, then other multiple agencies, special anti-robbery squads, marine, air wing, SFU, SCID, MOPOL, counter-terrorism, and all of that. So really, the money, the structure of the budget, the structure indicates a system failure, either a total lack of appreciation of the problem or just a lack of seriousness. Maybe because the people who make the decisions are surrounded by their VIP protection squads. They're not really understanding of...
And so there's a link between this situation of gross, I mean, chronic...
Serial.
Underfunding of
serial underfunding.
And the state of collapse of law and order that threatens Nigeria.
100%, because I think, and I speak as, first of all, a pre-independence child, so I saw the police when they were policing. I've seen the police when the military turned them into an expeditionary force, where you just respond. And I look at today's challenges as just symptoms of a general loss of control of public order. You see, we use the word security very casually, and we forget that the most important part is law enforcement, from traffic to, you know, to attitudes, to the way we treat our environment, to the disorder of crossing roads at any stage. It is very difficult in Nigerian cities to tell when something is going wrong, because you just get a sense of chaos all the time. So it's easy for people to operate within that structure. And this is because we've tended not to understand the real role of the police from the divisions, from the post. Their job is to assert order and to hold people accountable. So, and when you underfund serially, and even give the impression that you consider the police a low-income entity, which should be not given the kind of attention that is required, then over time you're going to get these extreme indications of security, breakdown of law and order. And you know, you get it in the motor parks, you get it in, you know, it has just become the order of the day. So, and I think that we have yet to, as a nation, confront the reality that no modern nation messes around with its police. No modern. As an example, Mexico has a federal police, and they have 10,000 patrol vehicles at any point in time. 10,000, compared to this year's budget for the police, which provides for less than 100 vehicles for the whole country. So there's a...
How if you divided the 100 it's budgeted for by 36 states,
yes,
that means each
you
state
probably
gets
get two and a half.
or
two and a half.
Maybe Lagos, because it's big. And
no,
Abuja.
they don't.
Maybe
no,
they'll give them
no,
3 or 4.
No. There's no. I do not. And I always speak carefully about these things, because, you know, in Nigeria, we tend to just swing facts around without really analyzing. I've done a very close analysis, because the nature of the job demands that one do so. I would say that if you gave Lagos 3, you'd be giving the Commissioner of Police a huge dilemma, because he just wouldn't know what to do with them. They would make no impact whatsoever. So for the National Assembly that looks at these budgets and then goes ahead with that, there's also a failure there to appreciate what the problem is. If the National Assembly, with 400 and something members, every 3 years buys 400 vehicles for its members and other members, and then in a budgetary year you are buying less than 100 for the police, there's clearly, you know...
And the budget of the National Assembly is about 150 billion. For about
400 with limited impact on our day-to-day lives.
And the police personnel is
370,000.
Almost 400,000.
Almost 400,000.
And their budget is just
311 billion. And as I said, 290 of that is salaries. So really, it's there is, if without trust funds and states' inputs, I think police would simply not be able to function.
It will
simply not be able to function.
Is it functioning today?
To the degree of the support of states
that each
state is putting in, yes, because we have to, we tend to just make sweeping generalizations about the inefficiency of the police. Of course, I don't think any part of the public sector can claim a level of efficiency. So, I mean, and then the police are a 24/7, hugely stressed agency. You saw the police college, you know. So I would say that if you look at, let's take the British man who was kidnapped, was rescued, not released as some news agencies have put it, but rescued by the Special Anti-Robbery Squad and the SIB, which are agencies in the state supported by the Trust Fund. Okay. So they are functioning, but not in the manner and to the extent that they ought to be able to.
Give me a sense, Mr. Awole. I have a little idea, but for the benefit of the viewers, what's the structure of your trust fund? How do you operate?
Okay, let's, if I am permitted to go back a bit. Like I said, we start from a funding system failure, which is systemic, which is serial, and for which there's no indication that anything is going to change soon. And therefore, and also we have a situation where, because of military rule and the cultures and customs of that period, governors of the states are called or expressed or addressed described as chief security officers. Now that gives the impression that they are responsible for security, or they have some level of control, or some level of responsibility, or some level of accountability. Of course, there's no constitutional or statutory provision creating this office, defining its functions, defining its powers. So it's one of these ad hoc military style things, because in the old days the administrators, the military administrators were the first line of defense for the regime securities, you know, and would indicate whether there was a coup, etc., etc. Now, this appellation has compelled governors to take responsibility.
In any event, if they didn't, they would fail as governors.
They would be perceived to have failed.
Because even if you did education or roads, and there was
total breakdown, so they would be perceived. And then the previous regime, Obasanjo's regime, as civilian president, and subsequently have managed to sell to the public the myth of responsibility of the governors, that any security failures are the governor's failures. And then they declare states of emergency and give the impression that, oh, the reason why we are declaring a state of emergency is the governor's failure. Whereas constitutionally and statutorily, the governor has absolutely no power to control the outcome of security, nor does any state have its own security agency. So that's very critical. There's only federal police,
federal SSS, Army,
Civil
Navy.
Defense, Army, Navy, FRSC, all of them are federal. Federally commanded, federally budgeted, deployment of men, etc. So it's really outside of the governor's...
Mr. Arthur, let's take a short time, and you'll continue this
okay.
We'll be right back.
My name is Laide Awoyemi. I live for Lagos. You see, as our new Lagos just defined the goal. Good thing, good though. To go market now, no hard at all. Just pay. Sit down inside BRT bus. Small time, you don't reach where they go. Hospital call, the full ground. And for me and my pikin where I just born, treatment now free. You look left, you look right. Them they build new roads, new hospitals, new schools, new things everywhere. Everywhere they shine, gone. We thank God though. But come on. I hear saying that this tax money will they pay. And then they used to do all these good things. Me, they pay my own tax. Say they pay your own.
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back to the Policy Council. My name is Okwemi Agbaji, and my guest is Mr. Fola Afewere, Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. And together we're trying to understand the issues around funding of security in Lagos State. So, Mr. Afewere, you were describing the background.
The background, right.
Please, go on.
So, 2007, when Governor Fashola took office, he felt that there was a need for a more structured response to the issue of insecurity. And so what he did, first of all, was set up a committee, very broad-based, cut across all sectors, headed by Alhaji Musiliu Smith, the retired Inspector General, to examine, you know, some of the issues of insecurity and what the structural problems of the inability of the police to respond more effectively. And of course, at the end of the day, the basic answer was funding. So if you said you have the answer A, B, C, A would be funding, B would be funding, C would be funding. Okay. All others are collateral, they are incidental.
The consequences
they are
consequences.
Exactly. And if you do fund properly, improved security will be a consequence of that. So the issue was, how do you do it in a way that is structured, accountable, and sustainable? Since the 90s, and more so after 1999, state governments have tended to give mainly vehicles.
Okay.
You give, you will see 10, 15, but there was no structure, so they could disappear into the black hole of accountability. They could be taken to other states. The governor then decided that, and then the committee said, why don't you set up a trust fund, which would be able to attract inputs from private sector and public sector and private individuals, and somehow, now this had never been done. We've had a police equipment fund, but we know what happened to that. It wasn't a creation of law. It was totally, and today it's disappeared.
Seemed like some scam or
Scam, and even a good idea. So the first law that was passed and signed and consented to by him in 2000, in his administrator, was the Lagos State Security Trust Fund law. So
the trust fund is a creation of law.
It is a creation of law with structures and accountability built in. Now, what is its structure? It has a board of trustees, naturally, and then it has management. So the board is with the chairman, and that's Mr. Remy Makonjola, who's been the chairman since its inception. He's the chairman
associated with Caverton.
He is the chairman of Caverton Helicopters. You have Mr. Olusegun Wahid Kazim, a retired Deputy Inspector General, who brings his operational knowledge and that. Then you have the managing directors of 3 banks. First Bank, Mr. Bisi Onosanya. You have Mr. Kehinde Idrosimieti of Sky, and then you have Zenith Bank there as members. Then you have myself as the CEO, and
the commissioners.
2 commissioners representing government. And you can see that the private sector has a majority of members.
And then I must disclose for the benefit of viewers, myself,
yes, yourself,
as a member.
As a member.
Okay.
Fine. So, and that's how that's the board. Now, all spending decisions, all, are only with the approval of the board. And no money can be spent without one board member's signature and the executive secretary. So it's structured in such a way that, every penny is accounted for. The law demands the appointment of external auditors.
So you have external auditors.
Since 2008, PricewaterhouseCoopers have audited the accounts of the trust fund.
On an annual basis.
And this is always presented at the end of the year at the annual town hall.
So that's meeting. Another institutional.
So that's very institutional. Fine.
The town hall.
The town hall.
In which all the donors
return, more solicitations made, and the report of the fund's activities for the last year, including the audit, are presented. And that has been fundamental to the retention of trust of the public over the years. You see, there are certain things, in my view, that you do not compromise on. And one of them is information about your financial position. This idea of having audits 5 years behind is, for me, an extraordinarily...
I know that you've done your audits for
2012. We are.
And it has been presented.
It has been presented.
So audited by PricewaterhouseCoopers.
By PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, and we are in the process of auditing expenditure for the past, 2013. So that's how it works. But essentially, like I said, we had no experience, and there was no precedent of how to run a trust fund. Did we suddenly become a procurement agency? How would we raise the money? What would be the structure of decision making and all of that? And and of course, what does the fund manage? It manages contributions from the government. And I have to reiterate that the government does not give cash subventions. It only, when it's going to present equipment to the police, it presents it to us, so that the police get it through us. And that,
so that you can manage
that provides for ownership on behalf of the members of the public. All cash receipts are from corporate Lagos or other private sector or private individuals. All of that comes in, and then defacing their vehicles.
Which agencies, for purpose of clarity? And
Well,
how do you support them?
Okay, Lagos State Police Command, which is made up of the Commissioner's Office and his Special Anti-Robbery Squad and Operations, and then all the divisions, right, of which there are about 112. Fine. You have area commands, of which there are 15. You have MOPOL, the Mobile Police. You have the Counter-Terrorism Squad. You have the Marine Police. You have, and of course, there are federal commands, as they call them in Lagos, Airport Command, Railway Command, Port Command. All of them are in dire need of support.
And you fund all of
them? We try to. We've been very careful, because otherwise we spread ourselves too thin. There are so many agencies. Then you have the State Security Service, and then you have military. Two elements of military that the fund supports. Operation Mesa, which is like a Army, Air Force, and Navy patrols within the urban areas and also the suburbs. And more recently, a component called Quick Reaction Group, which is an army group which is to cover and patrol major roads like Badagry, Ojodu to Ogere, and Lekki, Ekpe, Aja, Ekpe. So you can see that the burden on the fund is quite heavy. But in the period that the fund has been established, it is the local governments that have provided 20 armored personnel carriers and 228 patrol vehicles. More than the federal government has provided for the state since 2000.
So, Mr. Athawale, give us a sense for how much you've raised, the trust fund has raised in donations, in gifts, in cash over the period of its operation. And what have you bought for the police? What have you done for the police?
Now, like I said, the trust fund is like a repository of cash and equipment that the fund has realized will probably be in the region of 9 billion naira. About 9 billion, give or take. Now, this comprises equipment from government and cash and equipment from the private sector. Now, in the period 2007 to date, the trust fund has been able to distribute about 700 vehicles. 700 compared to less than 60 coming from the center since 2006. So that tells you, and even 700 is not enough to patrol a city of this size. London has 8,000 patrol vehicles, 8,000. But imagine without the trust fund, there'd be totally no...
So we would have had 60...
We would have had 60 and...
Which would have been broken down.
Oh, completely, because again, one thing that the trust fund has brought in is the philosophy and culture of maintenance. So, I mean, personnel Nigeria, there are about 289 APCs, police APCs, that have broken down and been abandoned. 289. We've bought 30 in the last 5 years, and we have a philosophy that there should be a minimum of 22 operating at any point in time. Now, no other government agency could have instituted and maintained such a policy, because they are not purpose designed for that. So the trust fund has been able to step in and do replacement, do maintenance, etc., standard maintenance and so on. The Lagos State government bears the cost of fuel, up to 300 million naira a year, because there are no provisions for these things in the police budget. So I think that the fund, while not at all claiming that the fund, as I said, is an answer, and it is not a security agency, so it has limited control over operations. But in terms of,
in terms of procurement, how do you handle that?
Yeah, procurement is done by, based on request from the agencies. The fund never embarks on any procurement exercise unless there is a request. The requests will be vetted. Of course, there are always requests. The requests come all the time.
There are more requests.
In fact, there are more requests, of course. And even agencies that are not traditionally law enforcement come to me to request.
Such as?
Oh, NDLEA, the civil, not customs, civil defense, even immigration, you know. And I'm wondering that if the federal government is establishing so many of these agencies, why doesn't it fund them? You know, but that's a question. I think the National Assembly needs to look at that. So we've had to be careful, as I said, not to overreach. And and not every request is catered to. What the board does is interrogate the request and ask the agency to justify it, and then try, to the extent that that the law says it must always have some money in the kitty for emergencies. So we have this cutoff point below which we don't. But we keep going, and I'm pleased to announce that a major telco has committed to giving us 25 patrol vehicles. So that's how we keep going, and all the divisions need to be resourced. We are the major supporter of the divisions in terms of vehicles and repair. And then, of course, we also invest in medical support.
And you support Neighborhood Watch.
And we support Neighborhood Watch.
Let's take a short time.
Okay.